Even more proof you can retire earlier than you think. Look, dude, the proof is overwhelming. Overwhelming. You can believe it or not, I don't care, but I'm giving you the proof, and you can listen to all these idiots saying, oh my goodness, we're all going to run out of money. That's on you. There's no validation for that. There's no proof of that. It's just not there. The evidence is all on my side. So your old buddy Josh, batting 1,000. They called me the White Rod Carew. Remember Rod Carew? I think was he the Latin, the George Brett, but he didn't hit 400. I don't think Rod Carew hit 400. I think George Brett hit 390. But I think one year Rod Carew hit like 388 as well in the 70s. So no one's hit 400 since I think Terrible Ted Williams, but I'm up there, dude. I'm hitting 1,000. I'm batting 1,000. So I'm the White Rod Carew. All right, so here we go. Susan Rottweiler, and it's not her name's not Rottweiler. I just like calling her that because it's fun. And Michael Hurd. All right, Michael Hurd. They must be lovers because every time they write, they're writing together. So they must be overweight lovers in the house. Overweight lovers in the house. Name who sings that song, Overweight Lovers. Put it in the show notes. It helps with the algo. So put in the show notes. Wife just came home. Explanations for the decline in spending at older ages. Notice they're not saying, is there a decline in spending at older ages? They're making a declarative statement that there is a decline in spending, and here's the explanations for it. So we're just going to go over this NBER. Pablo, stop. Not good. 15 pounds of pure panic. Pure chaos. Come here. There's no one over there. All right, so this is the NBER, National Bureau of Economic Research, dateline September 2022. All right, I don't get why old Suzanne and Michael don't get more notoriety in the financial planning world, because they, I kind of know, because they go against the grain. All right, so we're just going to read this, some of the highlights I have. If you're on my live stream on Locals on Saturday, this would be old hat to you, because we talked about this already. So we're going live tonight. Every Wednesday and Saturday, tonight's Tuesday, I know, but I got something to do tomorrow night. So every Wednesday and Saturday, we're going live on Locals. Be there or be square. $5 a month, baby. And you're in, because that's where the cool kids are. In the simplest form, the leading economic theory about the trajectory of spending at older ages suggests that spending, or consumption, should decline at an advanced age. And some guy named Yari in 1965 had written that. I'm not familiar with Yari, and I'm not familiar with that article. I am familiar with Mogladani, something like that. He won a Nobel Prize for the life cycle model, but I'm not familiar with Yari. But it's interesting. He had written some in 1965. Anyway, the first order condition for optimization of lifetime utility requires, therefore, that consumption is somewhat elevated in the earlier retirement, but then reduced on surviving. That you're going to spend a lot while you're having fun, and then later on, you're going to spend less just to basically pay the bills. Now, the question is, are you spending less to pay the bills because you're forced to, or are you spending less to pay the bills because you're getting less utility, less enjoyment out of doing these other things? Now, let's keep going. Let's see here. Right here. The life cycle model has been challenged by behavioral explanations that individuals lack the foresight that they spend too much earlier in life and are then forced to reduce at older ages. And in this framework, the observed decline in spending, again, is explicitly now, we're seeing a decline in spending. No one can argue against this anymore. The observed decline in spending is interpreted to indicate that economic preparation was inadequate because people are just too dumb. They need Bo Jiden to help us out. Some individuals ran out of wealth, causing a discontinuous decline in their spending and a decline in their population spending. If people reduce spending because they overspent while young, possibly because they're dumb, or the decline in spending is not optimal, but rather signals undersaving. Again, if the people are spending less, so we're acknowledging now that people spend less as they age. Is because they're forced to, because they ran out of money, or because they want to. All right? And we're going to go into that because the evidence is overwhelming that they want to. Let's see. As health declines with age, people will shift spending away from compliments towards substitutes. In this case, compliments are things you enjoy. I enjoy going to a football game. I enjoy going to see a movie. But as I get older and I just, my health, I'm not going to do as many things I enjoy because I don't enjoy it so much because I'm dealing with, I got a bad knee or something like that. I'm going to focus more on my healthcare spending as opposed to things I enjoyed. Not because I don't have the resources, because I get less utility out of it. All right, let's keep going. An earlier work, Hurd and Rottweiler, showed that among those 65 to 69, about 20% of total spending is for private transportation, almost all for automobiles. and trips and vacations. As I told you in my book, Relax and Retire, Debunking Inflation Fears, transportation is the second largest component of CPI. The biggest component of transportation is the purchase and leasing of a new vehicle, new or used vehicle. So if you already have your vehicles paid for and you're not purchasing or leasing one, then why would you use CPI as your inflation? It doesn't make sense. But anyway, Rothwilder and her are saying that. 20% of total spending is for private transportation, almost all for automobiles. These categories are likely complements to health. That is, individuals will want to spend more on them when in good health and reduce spending when their health declines. When they get sick or just less active, they don't need that fancy, shiny new car. Similarly, age-associated mobility declines, making going on trips and vacations more burdensome. At ages 85 to 89, such spending is about 10% of the total, so it went down by 50% from 65 to 69 to 85 to 89. An indication that this reduction is not due to the lifetime budget constraint is that the budget shares for transfer. Why? They're saying an indication that this reduction is not solely due to lifetime budget constraints is that the budget shares for transfers or gifts, a luxury good that should be independent of health, increases with age. So they're spending less, but they're giving more. That does not show a constraint that they ran out of money because they lacked preparation. It shows that they're like, I don't mind sitting around watching the freaking flowers and the butterflies. I'm going to give some money away instead, but I'm not going to buy that shiny new object. This implies that the budget constraint is not an explanation for the overall reduction in spending. All right. We find that the average scores on a scale that assesses enjoyment from 7 activities, such as eating out, travel, and clothes, indicate a decline in enjoyment over a 6-year time period, and that decline accelerates with age. People don't get as much utility of eating out, travel, and get new clothes as they get older. I can't stand traveling, and I'm 53. I don't like it. It sucks. I don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? My wife still enjoys it to some regard. As she gets older, she enjoys it less. So I like to eat out, but actually I don't even like to eat out much. I like my own freaking New York strip or ribeye on that charcoal grill right there. That's good enough for me, man. Got my dogs, got my pool, got my meat. I'm good to go. My garden. It does not appear that the decline in enjoyment is due to financial constraints because a fraction indicating a worsening of their financial situation declines with age. Are you hearing that? The declining with age of people who say their financial situation is getting worse. So if it's getting not worse and they're spending less because they get less enjoyment out of travel, buying a new car and all that stuff, that means it's not being put on them. They are choosing as they get older to spend less because they don't enjoy it so much. We interpret the results to indicate that at least part of the spending decline comes from individuals choosing to spend less on some activities because they get less satisfaction from spending on them. All right. So these guys look at the HRS, the Health and Retirement Study from the University of Michigan. They look at the CAMS, Consumption and Activities Mail Survey, and they look at the BLS. I think they got the BLS in here someplace. It's a Consumer Expenditure Survey. So the 3 primary surveys. We got the CAMS, we got the HRS, and we got the BLS. The book, my book, Relax and Retire, Debunking Inflation Fears, which you should get if you don't have it. What's wrong with you? We look solely at the CES, the Consumer Expenditure Survey from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But they all show the same thing. Check this out. Total spending in CAMS aggregates closely to total spending from the Consumer Expenditure Survey from the BLS. For example, in CAMS, those 65 to 74 and 75 or older, spending in 2007 was $40,700 and $29,400. So from 65 to 74, they spent $40,700. From 75 or older, is $29,400. In the Consumer Expenditure Survey, it was $39,700 and $29,400. So CAMS and the BLS are identical, and HRS is pretty close as well because CAMS is a substudy of HRS. All right, so crazy. The 2019 CAMS included some additional questions aimed at finding the reasons for observed decline in spending. Do the data support what we call behavioral interpretation because people overspent or undersaved? The decline is forced on them by budget constraints? Or do the data support interpretation based on standard economic theory that as people age, their utility drops and they spend less? Interesting. The median change between 2005 and 2007 among the 65 to 69-year-old singles was 5.43% a year, or 5.43% in the aggregate, or 2.7% a year. That's nuts. Over the 14-year time period, the median 2-year decline was 3.73%, a decline of 1.88% respectively for singles and 2.78% for married people. Each year, people are declining their spending by 2% if you're single, almost 3% if you're married. Notably, with the exception of several entries for single persons 85 or older, every entry is negative, showing that reductions in spending were almost universal over this period, and yet people are giving more away, and they're still satisfied in retirement too. Crazy, huh? A single person at 85 with a high school degree is predicted to have 72% of the spending of a 65-year-old. That level corresponds to a 2-year rate of decline of 3.3%. So every 2 years, they're dropping their spending by 3.3%. A single person at 85 has 72 cents on the dollar as someone who is 65 years old. And it's going to be even crazier here, too. The budget share of health spending does not include spending on insurance, which is included elsewhere, just out-of-pocket spending. Such spending increases with age, reaching 15% among those 85% or older. Yet spending on housing declines among couples almost throughout. Wonder why that be? Because their mortgage is being paid off, man. Come on. The healthcare goes up to all of 85%, 15%. Oh, we're all going to run out of money because of healthcare. That means they have 85% that's not being spent on healthcare. These are real people they're budgeting by. They're surveying, by the way. The budget share on trips and vacations of single people is approximately constant until 85%, or about 2% of total spending. So if you're a single person, you got $100,000 in income, just for simplicity, you spend $2,000 a year on budgeting for trips and vacations. The small allocation likely reflects the reduced utility of traveling alone rather than with a spouse. Exactly. As your spouse dies, you're not going to, when Charlotte dies, I'm not traveling at all, dude. I'm going to be a freaking miser. I'm going to be a troll living under the bridge. The budget, get out of here, Apple News. I don't want you. Oh my God, that stupid Apple News stuff here. Like Trump, oh my goodness, Trump, he's a Nazi. The budget shares on gifts and donations increase, which supports the idea that declining economic resources are not the predominant cause for spending decline. All right. How has your household spending changed over the past 6 years? Please think about what you typically spend, leaving out any unusual expenses. We suspect that most people will think about nominal spending. Nominal spending. That is the actual dollars they spent. And I'm going to talk about it here. This is huge. So nominal spending. I spent $100,000 in the year 2010. I spent $98,000 in the year 2020. Right? That's nominal spending. So you see what I'm saying? I spent $100,000 in the year 2010. I spent $98,000 in the year 2020. My nominal spending went down by 2% in the whole decade. But how much does that house cost from 2010 to 2020? How much is my property tax? Nominal spending includes inflation. So when you factor in inflation, my real spending went down from $100,000 not to $98,000 to like $85,000 or something. I'm just throwing it out there. Hope that makes sense. Again, $100,000 in 2010 is not the equivalent of $100,000 in 2020. In fact, what we find here is $100,000 spent. Let's see right here. We suspect nominal spending. All right, so some 37% of people reported no change from 2000 over the last 6 years. So over the last 6 years, over a third of the household said they did not spend any more money. They spent $100,000 in, was that 2017? They spent $100,000 in 2023. 29% recorded a decrease. They spent $100,000 in 2017. They spent less than $100,000 in 2023. And that's factoring inflation too. 34% reported an increase in nominal spending. Measure of the same household between 2013 and 2019, the median change in total nominal spending, based on the 35 detailed categories, was about negative 1%. The median change, 50% more, 50% less, which translates to a real decrease of negative almost 2% a year when inflation is factored in. So they're spending more on various products adjusted for inflation, but the products they buy they're buying less. They're not traveling as much. They're not going to football games. They're not doing as much activities. They're eating less. Just like I said in my book. So their nominal spending went down by 1%. It's median. So 50% of the people had less than a negative 1% decline each and every year. 50% of people had more than a negative 1% decline each and every year. Factored in with inflation, though, the real decrease was about 1.9% a year. That's crazy. The annual rate of change from 2005 to 2015 was about 1.3% a year. Less. Their spending went down by 1.3% a year, factoring inflation. Crazy, man. If you spend $100,000 in 2005 and $100,000 in 2019, we have it right there. Your real spending was negative 3.4% a year. Crazy. The proportion of respondents who reported each of the reasons for the reduction among those who said they had spending, 29% of all surveys, 50% said they could not afford to spend as much as they used to. All right, so we got 29% of people said they spent less. All right, that means 71%. All right, so again, the proportion of respondents who report each of the reasons for the reduction who said they had reduced spending, 40 to 50% of that 29% said they could not afford to spend as much. All right, so that if you take 50% of basically 30%, that's 15% of the people. 15% of the people said they could not afford to spend as much. That means 85% of the people said they could, or they stayed the same. This is the way it always is. There's always about 10 to 15% of the population that's not able to keep up with the Joneses. I get it. Is that you? I highly suspect it's not if you're watching my videos. I mean, it's the same thing with medical care. It's the same thing across the board. It's about 10 to 15, sometimes 20% of the population that's not doing great. Jesus said the poor will always be with us. And I mean, regardless of what the facts are, 15% of the people said they could not afford to spend as much as they used to. Although it's fairly frequent to reduce spending because of not being able to afford as much, the results do not support the idea that spending declines with age because of a greater tendency to spend less due to affordability. I already said that. We already talked about that because people are giving more away. They just have less utility value of doing the things they used to do as they get older. A large fraction of persons attributed a reduction in spending to reduction in required spending. The required spending went down. What would that possibly be? Oh, we had in mind spending on mortgages or education of children. Yeah, mortgages or education of children, or paying off car loans, paying off any kind of debt, 100%. I just can't stress enough, man. When your debt's paid off, you just don't spend that much. So much of your income is allocated to your debt while you're growing in your working years. You don't even recognize it. So much of your income is allocated to FICA, income tax, and debt payments. And then just raising kids too. So when the kids are gone, yeah, you're still gonna have some. I'm probably gonna support some of my kids as I go forward. I get a little bit. And what I mean, I don't mean a huge amount, but I'll probably help them out. But that will drop off like a brick in water. My debt will be paid off. There's no more debt. I can't tell you how much my income is going to debt. And then income taxes, basically. I mean, how much income tax you got to pay? Yeah, my hands are dirty. I play in the dirt. Sorry. I mean, a lot of times if you're poor on paper, you don't pay any income tax. I don't think people recognize how much of their allocation of their income is going to those three things: taxes, debt, and children. It's crazy. All right, let's keep going. Longest age band was 50 to 59, I think is what it was, or 55 to 59, something like that, maybe 64 to 69. But anyway, among those in the youngest age band, 26% report no change in their financial situation, while 37% report a worsening and 37% report an improvement. All right, so 63% say no change or an improvement. This is with retirement, I think, too. Changing constraints, yeah. And yet, this is in sharp contrast with those in the highest age band, where the majority report no change in financial situation over 6 years. Approximately equal percentages report an improvement or a worsening. So over 50% say their financial situation stayed the same, which means it's not declining, which means they're spending less because they want to. But they spend more on the front end of retirement because they're still enjoying travel and all that stuff. That's why you got to do your traveling first, man. You got to get it out of the way because you get older, you're not going to want to do as much. The overall impression is that the older population compared with the younger population became a little bit more satisfied with the economic situation over the previous 6 years and felt a little less financially constrained. The older population felt a little bit more satisfied and felt a little less financially constrained. Even though the why? Because the older you get, you're having more constraints. That's not what the data says. Just no other way around this. Let's see if I got anything else in. So we're just going to go down here. I'm going to show you some of the charts here. Hold on a sec. All right, spending past single and married people. Here's High school diploma, less than high school diploma, college, some college. You can see single and married people is 65. It drops from 100 all the way down to freaking less. That's about 70 right there. If you're college, is about right about 70. That's a 30% decline. Single persons drops from 100 down to freaking 60. Married people, oh wait, that's single people right here. Okay, never mind, scratch that. Single people drops from 100 to, freaking, look at that, dude. I mean, it's well below 80. And then married people drops to well below 60. Nuts. Budget shares. Oh, check this out. Look at this. Housing goes down. Crazy. Isn't that crazy? So if you're single, because a lot of singles rent, your housing drops, and it starts going up again. Probably because rents or something like that. I don't know. But look, married people, shoopsh. So housing, if you're married, is about 27% of the budget, and then it drops to 20% as you get older. Housing, if you're single, drops from 30% all the way down to 25%, and then goes up about 26% as you're a little bit older, but still drops. Healthcare goes up. So 50 to 54, 7% of your budget goes to healthcare if you're married, and then, or if you're single, and then it goes up to about 17%. Transportation drops. Oops. Why? Because you look at that. Transportation, the older you get, the less you spend on cars. That's just all there is to it. Clothing drops way off. Look at single people. They spend all kinds of money on clothes when they're between 50 and 60, but then it just drops like a brick in water. Trips and vacations for couples, it goes up until they hit about mid-70s to mid-60s, and it starts dropping significantly. But yet, gifts and donations goes up. So how could it be possible that gifts and donations go up if people are financially constrained? Look at that. We're talking a doubling of gifts and donations. 4% for couples of their budget goes for gifts and donations here. They're almost tithing here. Crazy. All right. 6-year spending changes recollected and observed. Decreased a lot, decreased a little, stayed about the same, increased a little, increased a lot. I mean, just, oh my goodness. Decreased a lot, decreased a little, about the same, increased a little, increased a lot. So even if they're increasing, it doesn't mean they're put out. It just means they're increasing because they want to. And you can see why. We're spending more on gifts and donations. We're spending less on transportation, less on clothing, less on trips and vacations, more on healthcare, and less on housing. It's just as voluntary. Let's see here. So cannot afford. Let's see what this says. Among the 29% of the people who said they reduced spending, if you're over 85, 50% said they can't afford to increase spending. All right. That's just that simple. So again, about 15% of the population say they could not afford to increase spending. That makes sense. But here, as you get older, you have less enjoyment in increasing your spending. That's what that's showing. It's not because they're required, because they have constraints, because they have less enjoyment. Ugh, crazy, man. Things are cheaper. No one's saying things are cheaper. Anyway, here's the icing on the cake. Satisfaction with present situation. In your 50s, not satisfied is the majority. Well, not the majority, but the biggest number of people were not satisfied in their 50s. And the least amount of people are very satisfied in their 50s. In their 85s, the most people were very satisfied, completely satisfied, where by far the least people were not satisfied. Look at that. In your mid-50s, you're not satisfied. In your 80s, you're satisfied. I mean, it's just, look at that. Look at that just change, man. These people aren't, I know it's a long video. It's the same old flipping story. As people age, they become more content, more satisfied, less worried. So to sit there and I'm going to work another year because I got to get that, I'm going to chase that dragon. Dude, you got to do it when you're young, because as you get older, you're not going to do it. You got to get out of there. If you're miserable, if it's making you fat, it's making you heart attack, long COVID. So stupid. Long COVID. Oh, you just got to get out, man. I mean, obviously you got to look at your situation, but come on. You don't have any time to waste. Look, if you're 42, I'm not saying to do that, but if you're like 59, 60, 61, you're like, I think I'm done. Have you thought you could do this? The proof is in the pudding. As you age, you spend less, and you're still more content. Your spending goes down, your contentment goes up. Love your thoughts. We'll see you